Welcome to At the Ready podcast, where we gear up men to navigate life's battles with purpose. Join us as we arm ourselves with wisdom, faith, and a community of men prepared to walk this life together. Now let's get ready. On this episode of At the Ready, I sit down with Brad. No, not just myself. I sat down with Brad Smith, a good friend of mine. Had a great story. Tells almost about two different men living in one body. How he had, this professional police officer side, and then he also had the creative, artistic side. So we also get into talking about, being a man and how society, how sometimes we're required to be calloused, or how we need calloused men to help function. We need police officers. We need military members. We need first responders who are calloused. And what does that look like? How do we stay healthy in those areas? How do we stay mentally and physically tough and resilient? All these are conversations that we had throughout it. So great conversation with my friend Brad today. I hope you all enjoy it. So sit down, pull up a chair, put in an earbud, listen up as I talk to my good friend Brad. Now let's get ready. All right, welcome, Brad. Welcome to At the Ready podcast.
All right.
Good to have you.
Appreciate it. Appreciate being here.
Not only do we have the same name, Brad, but you're also a beautiful bald man too. You're hiding it under that cap.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah.
I don't want like two of we can't have two beautiful bald men.
It might break the internet.
That's right.
If we did
that,
I feel like. Brad, I wanted to have you on the podcast. I started this podcast to kind of maybe inspire some men, because I've looked around and I've seen, there's good men. We live in Western Kentucky, so there's good men in our area.
Sure.
But there's also some that are sucking.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I see the decline of it. It getting worse, and I see men who aren't stepping in the roles that they're called to be, that God made them, the men that God made them to be. I'm not saying every man's got to be the same, but I'm saying that there are certain areas. There are the pillars that I talk about in the first episode that every man should strive to be good at.
Right.
And you were always somebody that I respected as a man. When I looked at you, I thought, because I've known you since I was like a teenager. You work. I'm not going to tell all your stories.
So I'm a lot older than you.
No, that's not what. You're probably what?
56.
Okay, so you're 18 years older than me. Not terribly older. Yeah, I mean, technically you're old enough to be my dad.
You're sugarcoating it.
Not realistically. But you worked. You were a state trooper, police officer, and my stepdad at the time, he was a police officer.
Right.
So I'd seen you and hung around with you quite a bit, and I remember thinking that guy's a man's man. I remember looking at that. So I've always respected how you carried yourself and always kept yourself in good shape. Like you said, you're 56. You almost look better than me. I mean,
right, almost.
The
198 coat.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. What about pre-state trooper? There's some things about you that, like I said, I didn't know about you until one day we became neighbors.
Yeah.
And I was over at your house, and I was like, wait a minute, you can do this and you can do that? I always knew state trooper, Brad. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm from a little town in northern Kentucky, Carrollton. I was born and raised there. Went to school at Carroll County High School. I was a jock. I mean, I was a dumb jock, almost really. I was real competitive as a kid, and God had obviously blessed me with athletic ability.
Yeah.
Looking back, I realized that, because at the time, and plus I was driven. I had two older brothers, There's 5 of us, but I'm the middle wild child.
Gotcha.
I got 2 older brothers, a younger brother and younger sister. But my 2 older brothers, people talk about, who's your hero? Superman, Batman. My heroes were my older brothers. And they were 8 and 11 years older than me. So I always had this, like, they were always up on a pedestal. So anytime, like, I watched them play sports. And I remember, if you want to have yourself in perspective, have 2 older brothers that are studs. You know what I mean? Because I remember looking at them going, I'll never be as good as them.
Yeah.
And I just thought they hung the moon.
Were they nice to you, or were they like, I'll never let Brad win kind of?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my boys are 10 and or 9 and 15. They're about right at 6 years apart.
Yeah.
And I see that with my youngest son all the time. They'll be out there playing basketball, and my oldest son, both my boys are athletes, but my oldest son's just draining threes and dunking on him, and he's like, I'll never beat him, and I'm like, you probably won't, because he's 6 years older than you. Like, it's okay.
Right. Well, I grew up with that, so my reason for saying that was I just became, and I always had that like drive to be good at whatever it was, and if it was basketball, football, here's something that a lot of people don't know about me as far as like especially sports, but I did well in all the sports. I was recognized, as far as different things, but played football, basketball, ran track, I played baseball, but what a lot of people didn't know, and I was good at all those, people didn't know is my best sport was golf.
Oh, yeah.
And I was actually being recruited by Arizona State on a scholarship.
Nice.
When I was a sophomore in high school. So, my dad started me when I was real young, and I was always embarrassed to be good at golf.
To be good at golf.
Yes,
wow.
Because it was a sissy sport.
Yeah.
Back then.
Or you see like old men playing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like there's no contact. Mm-hmm. There's no really physical exertion. But golf is the most mental game I've ever played, especially if you play it at a high level. Mm-hmm. It's like chess on, whatever, with some athletic ability. But anyway, I went to high school, graduated high school, had no idea what I wanted to do or be. I went to college at Eastern. I wanted to play football, but I was injury prone, and I didn't play smart. The football was my favorite sport.
Yeah.
But I played like a banshee.
Just ruthless.
Yeah. I just wanted to see if I usually knock myself out, but I was trying to knock, I don't know. It was just put the helmet on, you're a different person.
Yeah.
And so in college, what I thought for a while was I wanted to teach and coach. And as the story goes, I was living in, me and my roommate, Mike Swatsina, were living in a probably the most welfare-looking apartments. I mean, you talk about roughing it, man, because I was working at UPS, going to school full-time, trying to make ends meet, eating peanut butter and crackers for 3 meals a day, And
Is that before ramen came out?
Well, ramen too, and I'll tell you another way, another good filler, cheap potatoes. So that's what I would have in my kitchen.
Nice.
My mice infested kitchen. But anyway, one night I was working at UPS. I'd get home about 2 or 3 in the morning, and I got home, and my roommate was still awake on the couch, and he was watching TV. And when I sat down, the news was ending. And the news anchor said, as a reminder, tomorrow is the last day state police will be taking applications. And he goes, Smitty, that's what you ought to do. I'm like, screw you, man. I don't be a cop.
Right.
And that's what I said.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, man. He goes, I could see you doing that. I could see you being a good cop, being a state trooper. I'm like, Yeah. So I was like, I woke up the next morning, me and my mullet, and I went down to State Police Post, Richmond Post, Post 7. And I walked in, and I noticed there was guys sitting around the room in 3-piece suits, brand new shoes. I've got a flannel shirt on, look
you didn't
like
dress the part.
No. So I walked in, and it was like I'm looking at them. I'm like, what are they doing in post? So I walked to the window, and I said, "Yes, ma'am. I'd like to have an application for the state police." And she goes, "Okay." Well, what I didn't realize was they do an interview at that time.
Yeah.
As soon as you apply,
Right
you got an interview.
Yeah.
And she said, "Do you know you're going to be interviewed today?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's why they're all dressed up."
Right.
And I've got jeans and boots and flannel shirt, ragged flannel shirt. So I'm like, you know what? I ain't leaving. I'm going to do this. So about an hour goes by, and they finally call me. Of course, it was a lieutenant. I don't remember who he was or his name, but I remember he introduced himself as lieutenant. He said, he walked out, Brad Smith, and I'm the only one there. I'm the last guy to go. And he looks at me and he goes, "Really?" And I'm like, "I'm sorry." He's like,
"Dude, I didn't know."
"Okay, come on back." So we went and sat down, and he said, "So it's kind of disrespectful." And I'm like, I'll be honest with you. I don't mean to be disrespectful. I had zero. I told him the story last night. I just feel like maybe it's something I could do.
Yeah.
Completely horrible reason to be a trooper.
Yeah. I think I
could do it.
I think I'd be good.
Me and my mullet, and, whatever. But
I don't have to cut this mullet or what?
Yeah. So we went and sat down, and we talked for a little while. And as we talked, he warmed up to me, and he finally told me, we went through the whole thing, the whole interview. And he said, "I like you. I think you're a good guy." He goes, "But you have no chance whatsoever to get in this class." But he goes, "I think you should go ahead and go through the process because you'll learn." And I said, "So why can't I get in now, with all due respect?" And he goes, "You get a score on this interview." He goes, "I can't give you a good score. You look awful. All these other guys, you saw them, they're slick, their hair's cut, they've got brand new shoes on. Look in the mirror." And I'm like, I remember thinking, okay, here's a challenge. And I remember asking him, I was like, "So there's no way I could possibly get in this class coming up?" He's like, "You'd have to ace everything from this point on, and then it would be close." So I'm like, here we go.
You don't know what you just asked, buddy.
I was like, I remember thinking that was what made me want to be then,
Because state police, they carry a high standard of their looks.
Absolutely, especially then.
Yeah,
well, they do now too. But and let me remind you too, like the state police, and this was '89.
Yeah.
All right. So the state police in the '80s and even in the '90s, they're still the premier law enforcement, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Across the state. But at the time, like think about this: Graves County in the '80s and '90s maybe had one or two guys.
Oh wow.
Callaway County, maybe 2 or 3 guys. They had to buy their own car. They didn't have training.
Wow.
Like you could be a deputy, you could just get you a gun and a car and go to work.
I remember that because, my stepdad at the time, when he first started, they bought their own cars. I remember that.
They had to buy their own car, and they didn't have equipment. They had to buy their own stuff. They had to buy their own blue lights for their car.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it was like in Graves County, the same thing.
Yeah.
And think about the sheriff's department in Graves County right now. Dude, they're premier.
Yeah,
they're a squared away department. So but at that time, the state police was the big law, and they were really the only law. And that's what I wanted. You know, it's like, if I'm going to do anything, I want to do the state police. Now, would I do something different now? Maybe. I don't know. But at that time, that was the best of the best, really. And so it was like, if I'm going to do this, I want to be a trooper. And so, long story short, I cut my hair, shaved it, you know, high and tight type style, and started just like I do with everything. I just dove into it, man, and I was just like motivated. And so we went through the physical. I had to take they do like an achievement test type score, and then I had to, the last thing was do an oral interview with a really intense interview where you're sitting in a chair, like in a wooden chair. We're not relaxed like this. You're sitting in a wooden chair, and you've got like 5 people sitting at a table 10 feet from you, and you're just sitting there by yourself, and they start grilling you, you know.
I've
and
sat through some of those.
Yeah, and it's awesome. It really is. Like, it kind of separates the men from the boys just in an interview. So I aced everything, you know, and I was, out of 80 people in that cadet class, I was 78 to get in.
Yeah.
And I was like, there, you know, and what's crazy, man, is like, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know a cop. I didn't have any family. Most people that are cops, like when they apply, there's a connection.
Right.
There's a connection with law enforcement. Or at least military.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
something. There's
to
something.
put you down that path.
And I'm like, nope.
I was just about to ask, what'd your family think?
They thought I was crazy.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was because I was crazy at the time.
Yeah.
You know, it was just like I was like, in my senior year of high school, I was class president and class clown. That should tell you everything.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't have a brain in my head. I'd do whatever.
Whatever.
Usually it was like whether to get a laugh.
Yeah.
I was just like, I just wanted to laugh. I didn't take anything serious. So when they knew that Mr. Couldn't Be Serious was going to be a trooper, you know, especially one of my brothers, my next to oldest brother, Dave, he made it known he was pretty worried. He's like,
something wrong with you?
yeah. Well, just the fact that, you know, I don't think he thought I had the mentality to do it.
Oh, okay.
You know, that I couldn't be serious enough to do that job.
Yeah.
And it actually took him, I think one of the first, after I became a trooper, I came down here. You know, they sent me out of the academy down here. I'd never been down here before in Post 1. And like a year into it, you know, we could have ride-alongs. So he calls me. He's like, man, I want to come down there and ride with you. I'm like, bring it, you know. And he came down, and actually it was a good shift for him to be there because we got into some stuff.
Yeah.
You know, there was some adrenaline rush stuff happening. And at the end of the night, he was like, you're perfect.
Yeah.
This is perfect for you.
Yeah.
I can't believe, you know, I'm saying this kind of thing, but, you know, you
proved me wrong.
You proved me wrong kind of thing.
Nice.
Which sounded good, which was like nobody else could pay me that compliment, and I would have cared, but it was my older brother,
right.
One of my heroes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, yeah.
What were they doing at the time? Your older brothers, what was their occupation?
Let's see. At that time, I think they were Dave. He was working at Dow Corning, and he's retired from there now. But and I think Steve, my oldest brother, he was at Dow Corning too, but he ended up going to North American Stainless. He was a chemist.
Gotcha.
There. He's the smart one of the family.
Yeah. So a lot different than the career path you'd chose.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and we're a lot alike. You know what I mean? I mean,
y'all look a lot alike too.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
And we got the same mommy and daddy.
Yeah.
You know, but truth is, like, and Dave, the one that rode with me, he and I are absolutely the most alike as far as our personality, how we view our perspective on just about everything, you know. And that's where I get honestly, that was my hero. So I'm going to be like him.
Yeah.
You know.
What, and you stayed at Post 1 your whole career?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. I was very fortunate. I had a very fortunate career.
Gotcha.
When I was in the State Police Academy, they bring in different avenues of law enforcement to the academy class to say, here's what everything the state police does. So we may have a couple of detectives come in, that say, we work everything from murders to, theft, bank robbery, all that stuff. We had undercover guys come in that, said, we buy drugs, we go undercover, we do this, we do that. And the day, dude, I almost get cold chills from it, but the day SRT guy came in, Special Response Team, it's the SWAT team, and the state police does it right. They have a full-time SWAT team.
That's your sole job.
That's all you do.
You don't do patrol or anything?
You train as a team. There's 10 guys on the team. You train as a team, and you take calls, and you do other details. But for the most part, you get really good at what you do.
Yeah.
So
y'all were like, I would relate that, I'm a military guy. So y'all were like the SF of the state police.
Yeah.
All your sole job is to be
tactical. We were a tactical team.
Tactical, yeah.
And anyway, that guy came in. I had no idea state police had a SWAT team.
Yeah.
And he came in and, he's like, I'm Lieutenant Jerry Province with the Kentucky State Police, and I am in charge of the Kentucky State Police, SRT. We're a special response, we're a tactical team, we're a SWAT team, however you want to call it, but that's what we are. We're a full-time team. And the more he talked, the more I was like,
sitting forward. Yeah.
What? I'm just like, dude. And I remember the guy sitting next to me, I said, that is what I'm going to do.
Right.
And it's crazy. You had to have 5 years to get on that team.
Gotcha.
Which is absolutely necessary. But I didn't care. I started applying 6 months out of the academy. I'd send my application, and they're like, dude, you got 6 months in. You're not yet. And I'm like, yeah, but they're going to know my name.
Right.
So every 6 months, those records purged. So I'd put another application in.
Yeah.
6 months later, and they actually they started looking at me. You know what I mean? And they would send a couple of guys down to say, hey, go check this guy out. The guy keeps putting in like he's obsessed, which I was.
Yeah.
And so they came down and he rode with me, and I was high activity, especially as a young trooper. You know what I mean? I was like, I just wanted to, when I came 10-8, I was like, I had a warrior mentality, and I was a man on a mission.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm just going to find the biggest pile of crap and step right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do.
I remember that about you. Because when my stepdad worked for Graves County Sheriff's Office, and I would ride along with him all the time.
Yeah.
Because I thought for a long time that's what I wanted to do. We may get into that here in a little bit. But I remember if there was a call or if there was any kind of anything, you were close by.
Oh yeah, I'm going to go.
Or
I'm going.
You might have been the initiator.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so I got to do that. They had a selection process, and like 10 or 15 guys, and it's an intense process. They wake you up in the middle of the night. They make you shoot. They put you through a little bit of a few days of training.
Yeah.
And
like a little mini boot camp.
Yeah.
Do what you would normally do, but under stress.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. They induce some stress. So I did it, and I only had 4 years on, and a lot of the other guys were great guys that were trying out, and somehow, man, I got chosen.
You think it was your persistence?
I think it was a few things. I think, and I know it was because I talked to the guys afterwards. I was like, so why me? Why'd you pick me over these dudes that I know are good troopers?
Yeah.
And, and they just said, we think that you would get along. The chemistry is important for a team.
Heck yeah.
And they saw a little bit of selfless You know, if there was cleanup to do at the range, I would stay. I'd make sure I was the last one to leave. You know, I'd pick up cigarette butts and whatever, ammo, brass, whatever. You know, so
I think that's another thing that's severely underrated is just selfless service.
Absolutely,
especially if you're trying to join a team of some kind.
Yes. See, I think for me, what I loved about it so much was the team concept.
Yeah.
I'd played sports, you know, all my life, and it was just like I love the concept of team, and I still do.
Will you lose that if you? So let's think about an athlete who's in school, right? They play team sports in school. Maybe they even go to the next level in college, but we know that after college, it's less than 1% that make it to the pros. So then they have to. Then they're in the workforce, and what does that look like? Most jobs, I'd say, 80% of jobs are not a team environment.
Yeah,
you know, it's like you working for somebody you're doing.
Yeah.
So that makes perfect sense, really. Now that you say that, they miss. You saw that this camaraderie, the team.
Yeah,
thing.
I love it. I love it.
That's what I had, and I loved. Get back to that.
Well, and also I've thought about that a lot. Like human beings are. That's how we're geared.
Mm-hmm.
We're not islands.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's why we have political parties.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we have teams. That's why we have sports teams. That's, you know, there's so many things you can look at, you know, that where you have to be on a side or a team to do anything.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and that even points you can even go as deep as like that points to like brotherhood. You know, I feel like that's why we have as many in today's time. That's why we have so many mental problems, right? Because people isolate themselves.
Yeah.
Either through like video games or social media. You know, we think of social media as a great thing because you could connect, but at the same time you isolate yourself.
Yeah.
Because you're not getting physical interaction. It's through a screen, but that's
Sure.
isolating.
Sure.
And you allow people to speak into you, but you're not speaking into anybody.
Yeah.
So like you said,
Spot on.
As human beings, we're just meant to be social.
Right.
That's why the pandemic was so hard on people because it isolated everybody.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Which was
100% agree. You know, and and to this day, I don't miss being a trooper at all.
Yeah.
Like the day that I retired, I was like, I'm good. I did everything I wanted to do, and I did. You know, like backing up, I was like, I was lucky enough to do that. I was lucky enough because that's the only thing that I keep up with still. You know, in the state police, it's like. There is a Facebook page, and you have to have been on that team to be a part of this Facebook page. And the state police is a machine, man. I mean, I get we bleed gray. You know, we're the state police. You know, they indoctrinate that, and you just like if you're a Marine or if you're this, you know, you are something. You know, and I felt that, but here's what I realized that after you retire, the machine goes on.
Yeah.
And you're just
you were just a cog in a wheel,
yeah.
and then when you left, they just replaced you with another cog.
Absolutely, and that's fine.
Yeah,
I can deal with that. Some people can't. Some people and I never did identify. I didn't like identifying as a trooper because people looked at me different.
Yeah,
you know, it's like, but I'm like, no, I'm still Brad.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. I do a lot of other things. I like doing a lot of other things. This is just my job, and I do it well, and I'm going to do it well. But that's not. That doesn't dictate my life.
Yeah,
you know, that doesn't define me. Period.
So did you just do your 20 and that was it?
Yeah, I did like 22, but I did get to work undercover. I did that for a lot, and I was a detective. I worked actually I think. Well, I know he was. Marco Chapman was the last person that has been put to death in Kentucky, and I was part of that case.
Oh, cool.
That was up in northern Kentucky.
Yeah.
So, man, I've been like so blessed to do. You know, a lot of guys. I feel for the guys that they worked the road. You know, you call it work the road, being a trooper, road trooper for 20 some years straight. I got bored easy. You know what I mean? I had to do something different.
Yeah, I could see there. What I remember of being part of a police family is it's like highs and lows as a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a lot of boring times, and then there's times of extreme, situations happening, and then followed by a lot of boring times.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember that when I was overseas.
Yeah.
You almost you can get lulled into easiness because of the easy times. Then before you know it, something popped off, and now it's time again.
You better be ready.
Yeah,
you better be ready.
Yeah, that's cool. So, 22 years. I knew you, like I said, when I was a teenager, and all I ever knew you was as State Trooper Brad. And then 2000 and I can't remember if it was 11 or 12, I bought the house that I'm living in now. Moved in. Lo and behold, you live 2 doors down from me. Didn't plan that, but it was cool. I was like, hey, I already know somebody in the neighborhood. And then we got our crazy neighbor across the street. Yeah. He's still there too.
Shirtless Kyle.
Yeah. He's I don't know if you noticed, but he's been neutered. Like he's got some kids now, and he's like an old man.
Yeah. It's so funny because he was always kidding me about having so many kids.
Yeah.
And then next thing I know, he's topping me, man, in no time,
He spit them out quick.
And he was like, he would give me so much grief. It was like, dude, you can't go do anything, man.
Yeah.
You got all these kids. Next thing I know, dude, I went over to his house one day, and I could, how screaming, yelling young kids can beat you down.
Yes.
Mentally.
Yep.
And I went over there one day, and he was beat down, dude. And I just pointed at him and laughed. I was like, karma.
Yeah.
Karma.
That's what happens.
Yeah.
It comes around, goes around. So, you lived a couple houses down, and I remember, going down. You had a little shop out back, and I, went over and visited you. And then I learned a whole new side of Brad.
Yeah.
I was like, I remember going in your shop. I think you asked me to come. I was adding on to the shed, and you said, hey, come here. I'm going to show you something. And so I went over there and looked at something you had going on, because I was building at the time, doing construction. And I go in this shop, and you've got like guitars hanging on the wall. And I was like, oh, what's this? And little did I know, you can play guitar, you can make guitars. Tell us a little bit about that, like that side of Brad.
Yeah.
When did you start playing?
15.
Okay.
Obsessed with, again, like I'll get something, man, and just focus on it and become obsessed with it.
Yeah.
Almost to a fault, but I was, again, with my older brothers, Dave, he had a house in Madison, Indiana. And this was cool because it's like back in the early 80s, right? I was like 13, 14 years old. Yeah. Well, no. My brothers were into Crosby, Stills and Nash, America, James Taylor.
Okay.
Bob Dylan, Neil Young, that whole thing.
Gotcha.
And we were just going through, of course, we had records at the time. And I just felt like such a big shot at the time because I'm only like 13, 14. I'm hanging out with my brothers and we're just playing music. Mm-hmm. He's just putting records on.
I got you.
And all of a sudden, man, he puts Stephen Stills from Crosby, Stills and Nash. He had a solo album. And there's a song on there, and it's called Black Queen. It's about a card game. And it changed my life. It really did, dude. I mean, it hit me. I heard it's just an acoustic guitar, him and an acoustic guitar playing, singing. Mm-hmm. But it's so raw. I mean, when he played it, I was like, what is that?
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm like, I saved up. That was like, it was in the spring, and I was, I worked in hay, that whole summer. I saved up like $330 to buy my first guitar. Because I was like, I got to get a guitar. Mom, dad didn't have money to buy me a guitar.
Right.
They're like, a guitar, And so I saved up and bought my first acoustic guitar. And literally, and I still love the guitar.
Yeah.
But I would sit there. I didn't have any lessons. You know, I just taught myself some chords and, you know, some finger roll type technique playing. And but I would sit there as like a 15-year-old kid, and if you got an acoustic guitar and you're playing, you can put your ear on the top of the guitar, that shoulder right there, and it sounds like you're in an auditorium. And I would sit there and play for. I mean, I would play 8 hours a day.
Wow.
I just couldn't stop.
Yeah.
And I just fell in love with it, the sound, you know, and just.
So you just had a love for the music and
Yeah, I love music, but I just fell in love with the guitar, and then I got into, and I'm a creative nerd, man. I write poetry. I like writing, and I've written like probably 80, 100 songs, you know, and I mean, it's like, if you're a creative person, you get to create.
You have to.
Yeah.
Almost.
Creative people have to create.
Yeah.
They'll go crazy if they don't.
Yeah.
And that was just one of those things for me that I learned how to play. I got better and better, and just started writing, you know, and it just like, they sucked. My first song sucked, you know, and it was just like, but I would listen to it. I'm like, I did that. That's me, you know, in that song. And I'm still right, you know, and so yeah, I mean, I'm into anything, any and everything creative. You know, I appreciate creative people.
Yeah. I remember the first time I heard you play guitar, I was like, it's almost like you were two different people.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. Like the Brad that I didn't know, and then like State Trooper Brad. I know you're the same person, but like you just had. It was almost like you wore two different hats, you know. And I heard you play for the first time. I was like, man, this guy's actually good. Yeah. And then you made guitars. What made you do that? Decide to do that?
I was in a band, and you know, it's funny you say that because I had just moved back from, I think it was a SWAT team, and because I had to live up around Lexington to be on the team. There's 10 of us. We covered the whole state, you know, so you had to live central. So that's where I lived, and when that ended, I came back to Mayfield because I love it down here. And I remember I was in the gym, and I was working out, and I heard two guys over there talking. One of them's like, hey, man, bring your bass over. I'll set my drums up, and we'll jam tonight. And I'm like, you play drums? You play bass? So they're looking at me. They're like, yes, sir. Yes, because they knew I was a trooper. You know what I mean? We're about the same age. Right. Maybe I may be a little older, but anyway, they were like, "Yes, sir." Like, are we in trouble? You know, I'm like, no, I play guitar, and they're like, "Oh, sure you do.
You play guitar.
Yeah, a cop plays guitar." So I was like, "Hey, man, I've already written some songs, and at that time I was like a little bit heavier, and I said, here's a CD. You know, just check it out. If you like it, let's jam. If not." You know, because I don't want to do covers. Yeah, I write music.
Yeah, I want to do.
Why would anybody that writes music or writes songs want to do covers? Yeah. You know, and that's just always a mentality I had. And so I gave them my demo CD, and they left the gym, and I could tell they were like thought I was full of crap. You know what I mean? They were like, phew. I'm surprised they didn't throw the CD out the window. Yeah, really. And about an hour later, I get a phone call, and it was Jonathan Baker and who was it? Kyle Robertson. They're both great musicians. Yeah. Kyle's the best bass player I've ever played with. But anyway, they call me and they're like, "Okay, dude, this is you. These are your songs." Yeah. I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "For real, these are your songs?" I'm like, "Yeah." So we ended up starting a band. Yeah. And it was so fun. I mean, we played all my songs, all original, and just had a blast. Yeah. You know.
Let me tell a funny story. So, your drummer, Baker. Yeah. I fast forward probably several years, and I had to go to school. I work at a chemical plant, and I transitioned from production to maintenance, and I had to go back to school for a couple of years, like a tech school, you know. And I go, and my instructor, Jonathan Baker,
West Kentucky.
Yep. Yeah. And so I don't even remember how you got brought up. I think you were still living by me at the time. And anyways, your name gets dropped and he goes, "You know Brad Smith?" And I was like, "Yeah, I've known Brad since I was a teenager. You know, he's my neighbor, all that kind of stuff." And he goes, "I played in a band with Brad."
Yeah.
And my first thought was, "Yeah, okay, whatever."
Yeah.
He's like, "No, really, you know, this and that." And to me, he and I feel bad now, but when he first started talking, you know, he was a good guy, teacher,
Yeah.
and I'm in my 30s going through this school, so we're about
Right.
the same age.
Right.
He's probably, you know, 6-7 years older than me, but we're the ones closest to the same age, and so, you know, we built up a friendship. But anytime I brought something up, he'd be like, "Oh, I've done that," or "I've done that," or "I've done
Yeah.
that," and I was like, "Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
here's one of those guys
Yeah.
that's been there and done
Right.
everything," you know. But sure enough, you know, he would whip his phone out and show me a video, or, you know,
Yeah.
because he'd fought in some MMA
Yeah.
and done some
Sure did.
some strength training and all
Yep.
that, and played in a band with you. I was like, "Yeah, whatever," you know. And he's like,
Yeah.
"No, really." And he whipped out a video of y'all doing a set. I was like,
Yeah.
"Okay, maybe
Yeah.
you have done that."
Yeah, he's a
before."
great drummer, man.
Yeah.
We had such a good time. You know, it was I remember we played, I don't know if you remember Carlin's in Murray.
Mm-hmm.
It's a parking lot now, but where the police department is, right across the street is a parking lot.
Yeah.
That used to be it was a gym at one time, and then it went to Carlin's, and then it went to Boulders, and then it burned down.
I remember Boulders.
Yeah. So our first show, we had some friends, and we only had like 8 songs at the time, but we're like, we just want to go out and play. You know, we just want to see what people think.
Yeah.
And so we were connected with other dudes in bands around Murray at the time, and the band scene was kind of really cool in Murray at that time. It was like there's some good bands, a lot of good cover bands, you know, and all this other stuff. So one of the bands was playing at Carlin's on a Friday night or whatever, and so of course, everybody knew each other, and we're like, "Hey, you think we could open up for you guys? You know, just get our feet wet, you know, play in front of some people." They're like, "Yeah, sure, we'll let you open up for us." So I remember being so nervous because I'm like, these people are going to hate us.
Yeah. They're gonna boo us off
we're not
stage.
playing 90s, you know, hip hop. We're rocking. We got attitude.
Yeah.
We're bad attitude.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, hey, let's just go do it, man. Let's crank it up, have some fun. They may all leave, but we're gonna do our thing.
Yeah.
So we set up that night, and the place was packed because a little buzz had been going around about our band, you know, with friends and stuff. So a lot of people were there. 9 o'clock, we started playing, and the place was packed. And so I remember I was so nervous. I had my hat pulled down over my face, you know, and I'm like,
Who's
can't.
singing? Are you singing?
Mike
too?
Navin. No,
Oh, okay.
I sing when I record, but
Gotcha.
I'm not a singer.
I got you.
Mike Navin, my favorite singer.
Yeah.
Great, creative, talented guy, but he's the singer. And Ben Muse is the bass player at the time. Kyle had to stay with Loophole, the band we were opening up for.
Gotcha.
You know, so we got to open up for him, man. And this is like, other than my kids being born, this is like a memory that I'll always have.
That's cool.
Because I was so nervous. I'm thinking, well, they're going to boo us. We suck. And it's all my fault because I wrote these songs. So I remember we're like, let's just do it. You know, so we got up there. I pulled my head down on my face, man. I was so scared. And we just drove right into the first song. And I played the whole song with my head down, you know. And as soon as we hit that last note, it's like, dun-dun. You could hear, I mean, people went nuts, man. And I just remember it caught me so off guard. It was the most beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at Mike and at Ben and at Baker, and we all just looked at each other and went, "Oh my God, they like us," you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And we played the rest of, you know, we played like 8 songs or whatever. And what's funny is, and not funny, I kind of feel bad, but everybody left when the other band started playing that we were opening up for.
Oh, no.
Everybody left. It was kind of a letdown.
Yeah.
You know, because, and it was just 2 different kinds of music too.
Right.
You know, we had a lot of energy, you know, but anyway, that was so fun.
Yeah.
So fun. I miss that.
I don't play like you do. I mean, I play guitar, but I'm just a
You're lefty too,
yeah.
ain't
I'm a
you?
lefty.
Yeah.
yeah, and I play bass too. I started out playing guitar, and I started overseas. There was a couple guys over there that played, and that was kind of the thing. The people that played after we were in country for a month or two, they had their guitars sent over.
Yeah.
You know, because there's like I talked about earlier in deployments. There's a lot of downtime, and then stuff ramps up, and so you need something to do in the downtime, keep your sanity going. And so there was a guy and right next door to me. He's like, I said, man, I took lessons as a kid, very short, and one of the things that threw me off is I'm left-handed, but I was bought through family a right-handed guitar. And so I tried, and I can make all the chord shapes, my fret hand with my left, but I can't hold a rhythm with my right hand to save my life.
Yeah.
And being left-handed, I'm ambidextrous anyways. Like even using my phone, I use my right hand.
I'm actually almost as much left-handed as I am right.
So same for me. I can bat either way, swing a golf club either way, But anyway, the guy in the shed next to me, he was like, yeah. He said, you want to buy a guitar? Of course, I had deployment money. You want to buy a guitar? I'll work with you. So I buy a Dean.
Yeah.
A Dean guitar is like $300. Cheapo. I still have it. Sounds like crap, but I still have it. Now I own a Martin. So I'm like a Dean. Look at that Dean. I'm like, this thing sounds like crap.
Sentimental.
Yeah,
now.
that's the only reason I keep it. But so I started learning to play then, and I only picked up bass because of here at church. We only had one bass player, and I thought, well, shoot, I can play bass. It's 2 less strings than an acoustic, so I picked up bass, and that's what I play here at church. But I know playing at church is a little bit different because I'm playing for an audience of one. I'm playing for God, but it is enjoyable. I love doing it. Yeah. And just playing with a band. It goes back to the camaraderie thing we talked about before, being a part of a team, being a part of a band is the same way.
And the chemistry's right. It's awesome.
Oh, if it's right, our band, we're all kind of moody. You work full-time jobs and then you show up for practice. And if everybody shows up in a good mood, it's some of the best music ever. Yeah. But you get one person who's just like having a bad day, and it's like, we might as well just
ruined.
Scratch it.
Yeah.
This practice is ruined.
Well, that's, you talk about, you were talking about, or I said, I didn't like identifying because honestly, I would rather identify as Brad the musician than the trooper.
As the creative,
Yeah, and honestly, like with the woodworking now, as much as I love it, if God came down and said, okay, Brad, you got to pick woodworking or music, I'd be like, buy woodworking.
Yeah.
Music that's my love, that's my passion.
That's good. What made you start making guitars? You said you joined a band.
Well, yeah, we got sidetracked.
Yeah.
Was in a band, and Mike, our lead singer, we were playing shows. We were having such a good time. Had a great following. If we went to Louisville or Fort Murray or Paducah, we'd bring people there. You know what I mean? We just had a great following. And but Mike, our lead singer, loved that guy, but he came to us one day, and we were already like, there are people talking about, hey, come down to Nashville and record. And I'm thinking, I think we're good.
Yeah.
And so right about that time, Mike just came out and said, hey, I'm joining the National Guard. I mean, that was it.
Yeah.
It was over. I mean, that was on a Friday night. We just played a show. He told us after the show, he was like, I hate to do this to you guys, but I've got to, and I don't blame him. It was like a career choice for him.
Right.
He wanted to join the National Guard to get into that retirement, that job, that career, whatever, But, he's telling us that. He tells us after the show, and we're like,
yeah. What are we supposed to do now?
We're done.
Yeah.
I'm like, we can't replace Mike. He's our voice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was like, I didn't want to replace him. And so that was it. So I went home that night. And, of course, I have expensive taste in gear. The guitar I had, the amps, the speakers. I just had expensive taste. And I remember going to bed, and I was down. God, I was so down, because I'm like, man, this is so fun. And I never took money. Like if anytime we had a paying gig, I'd let them split it. I didn't want the money.
Yeah.
I'm like, I do not care. We'd make $800. I like split it 3 ways or whatever.
You just love to play.
I just wanted to play. And I think they like that too.
Yeah.
They got to split the money.
Right, yeah.
But I didn't care. I loved it. So that night, this is actually the beginning of my woodworking career. But that night, I'd always thought, anytime I ever got a guitar, I would adjust it, take it apart, take the pickups out. I would just do things to it,
Try and make it a little better.
Yeah, I would like try to get the action better, or I just wasn't afraid to try. Most people are like, they don't even want to turn the tuning key.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm like, I've always thought I could build a guitar. I'd been thinking about it. I always was intrigued with woodworking, but I just had nobody to push me along or anything. But I remember I went to bed and I was thinking about it, and I woke up at like, when things are on your head, you just wake up through the night. I was waking up through the night thinking, man, I wonder if I could do that. And I woke up at like 5 o'clock in the morning, and I just went to bed at like 1:30 or 2.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I woke up at like 5, and I'm just like, slam my fist down. I'm like, I'm doing it. I'm going to build a guitar.
I'm making one.
I'm selling all my gear, and I'm buying woodworking tools. That's how stupid I am. So I did.
That's some all in right there.
That at 6 o'clock in the morning, I was calling people, right? Going, hey man, didn't you build a bird box in high school? You think you could teach me?
Think you can help me build a guitar?
Yeah. And they're like, dude, no, shut up.
Why are you calling me this early for this?
So I bet I called 30 people that day, and I just kind of worked my way up. And what I realized was there was nobody that could even remotely begin to teach me that. So I just I sold all my stuff, sold my expensive guitar and amps, and I bought some woodworking tools, and I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
I would have to call and say, what does a shaper do? Do I need that?
Yeah.
And people were like, I don't know. It was just it was so new, but it was exciting.
Yeah.
I'm like, I want to buy this tool. What's this tool do?
Yeah.
So I dove head first into it and ended up I bought some, I went on eBay and I started buying like curly maple. And I bought like a miter saw and a table saw, and I had pretty decent money, from selling that stuff to be able to buy some decent tools, and bought a bandsaw, ended up getting a couple other things, and man, I'm just not afraid to try.
Yeah.
And I just dove head first into it, and what I did was I started drawing on paper, because I wanted a guitar that was signature looking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you got Les Pauls, Strats, Tellys, Paul Reed Smiths now, and
they all have.
You look at it and you're like, that's a Les Paul.
Yeah.
That's a Strat.
Yep.
And I wanted that, so I started drawing on paper. And you have to be careful, because if you don't know about playing guitar, you can screw yourself out of being able to play, on the upper
the upper end
of the guitar, of the fretboard. So I would draw something that was cool, and then I would look at it and go, you can't do that. You know what I mean?
I can't even play with it.
So I just kept going, and I drew a couple things, and I'd get a slab of wood, and I'd take the bandsaw and cut the body shape out. And I remember I would set it up. It's kind of the same thing I would do with the song. I would listen to the song, or I would look at the guitar body on the wall. I'd put it up on a wall, and I'd walk away from it. And I'd come back maybe an hour later, maybe a day later, and I'd look at it. And if I came back and I looked at it and went, that's stupid looking, then I would throw it in the trash. And And same thing with a song. If I came back and I'd listen to it, okay, I wrote this song yesterday. Sounded really cool at the time. I'd re-listen to it and go, what was I thinking?
Yeah.
This is the stupidest song I've ever, what in the world? Sound like old MacDonald had a farm, you know what I mean?
Rock style.
So that's what I did. I went through several bodies, and I finally had this one body that I'm like, every time I come back, I was like, oh, that's it, So
I remember one of your kind of signatures to your guitars was always like a very special wood.
Yeah, just really
a unique wood.
Well, yeah, like curly maple is just like beautiful. There's tone woods. Maple is a tone wood. Mahogany is a tone wood. Oak is not a tone wood. Cherry is not a tone wood. There's so many different. There's a lot of woods that are tone woods, and it's like you can take it and you it's the tap. That's why they use like spruce and rosewood on acoustic guitars. It has to have that resonance. And if it doesn't have a resonance, it's a dead. It's just going to sound like you're playing a broom handle.
Right.
So. But yeah, that was it, man. The band broke up. I sold my stuff. I went full blown dumb into just diving into building a guitar, not thinking anything about it, not thinking down the road.
Yeah.
But I ended up building 126.
Now, do you have any somewhat famous musicians playing any of your guitars?
I built one for John Michael Montgomery, Jeff Cook in Alabama. And I thought, I was actually in a country band. I don't know if you knew this. Google or YouTube, Cache Creek, shout out. Shout out to my boys, Cache Creek. They're still a band.
Oh, yeah.
But they were John Michael Montgomery's band.
Okay.
Obviously, my buddy Kirk Willie is very well connected,
Yeah.
With the country music scene. And he's John Michael's tour manager, sound guy extraordinaire. You know what I mean?
He's done some stuff for here at church, like sound stuff for us.
One of my best friends.
Yeah.
But anyway, he got me hooked up. I met John. John's a cool guy. And John had a band for like 12 years. And the guitar player, the fiddle player, decided after 12 years they couldn't come to agreement. I think this is how it went on like money. So they decided, hey, we'll start our own band called Cache Creek. And I'd built Chemo, the lead guitar player, who's he makes me look like a buffoon on the guitar. I mean, he's just so good. But I met him at Kirk's studio, and we started talking, and he was hearing me play. He's like, you're pretty good. I'm like, no, I'm not. Not compared to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But thank you.
Yeah.
And so we got to be friends, and I built him a guitar. And one day we were talking. He was like, I want you to be in our band. I'm like, what, as a guitar tech? He goes, no, in the band. I'm like, why? I don't even like country.
Yeah.
I may never made bones about it. I don't really care for country music. And he's like, well, you can play. You've got great stage presence, and again, back to teamwork. We think, you could get along with everybody.
Fit good, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, cool. And I thought at the time, this, and he told me this. He goes, this would be a great way to get your guitars out there. We'll mention you at all the shows. We're all playing your guitars.
Hey, like this guitar.
Yeah. And so I thought that was cool, and I did, and it just I couldn't. I felt like a sellout. I ain't gonna lie.
Because you're playing country?
Yes. Well, I'm playing just songs. I'm not playing my stuff.
I got you.
I got songs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I know I'm not thinking my songs should be worth money to anybody. You know what I mean? But they're mine.
Yeah.
And that's where my passion lies. And I just felt like, why are we playing? I don't want to play this. I don't want to go on the road. You know what I mean? I didn't like it. I didn't like the road, the life on the road.
Yeah.
And so I just very respectfully and humbly opted out of the band. But we made a video, and it's called it's Cache Creek Unlikely Angel, and it's on YouTube, and it's the quality's awesome. I mean, it looks like something that could be on CMT.
Yeah.
and it went to like I think 20s or 30s on the music charts. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, it was a really great song.
Yeah.
You know, and it was fun. I'm in a video. I'm in a country music video, but it just it just didn't move me, man. I
Yeah.
got it. If I'm going to do something, it has to move me. That's just bottom line.
Yeah.
You know, and because if it doesn't, I don't care. I don't care.
Yeah, I can kind of see that about you too. I remember, so when we lived next door to each other, I'm building a shed. You know, I just moved into the house. I didn't have a place to park my mower. I bought this, nice mower. So I was like, I'll just build a shed on the side. And you come over there one day. He's like, I want to do some work on my house. I think we turned. No, we built the staircase at the house over there. But your other house, I helped you turn the attic space into like a bedroom for your girls. But anyway, you're like, I need to build like a staircase, something different. And I was like, I think I even said, don't you do woodworking?
Yeah.
And you were like, yeah, but not
Different
that
critter.
kind of woodworking. Like,
Totally different.
I don't do structural woodworking. I was like, that's easier. In my opinion, that's easier than
It's
what
carpentry.
You're doing.
There's carpentry and there's woodworking.
Yeah.
Totally different.
Totally different.
Totally
I'll agree
different.
with that.
Yeah.
I'll agree with that. Because I'm a good carpenter and I'm a decent woodworker, but you're like a good woodworker. And
Yeah, I'm a decent carpenter. I probably could have done that. To build a staircase, it needs to be right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that leads into now you own your own business.
Yeah.
Cabinetry and what's it? Smith's Cabinetry and Furniture?
Well, right now it's called Smith Home and Design.
Home and Design.
It's going to be basically a kitchen and bath store.
Yeah.
Or it is a kitchen and bath store.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was when I built my first guitar. That was like 21 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up building, and I sold 126 all over the world. Never had one returned. It's crazy, but it's the weirdest market. I was like, I felt like 90% of the dudes, and I met some great friends through it. But 90% of the people I was talking to were like my age, living in their mom's basement. Like, hey, man.
Yeah.
You're that dude, man, that builds guitars, yeah? And I'm like, yeah.
I always wanted a custom
Yeah,
guitar.
so it'd be like.
These weren't cheap guitars either.
No, they were high end.
Yeah, you were selling them several $1,000s,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So.
Because I remember thinking one day, like, I'm going to get Brad to build me a guitar. And you were like, yeah, I got that one. These are guitars you've already made hanging on your wall. Like that one's $3,000. That one's, and you listed off about 4 prices. And I was like, too rich for my blood.
Yeah.
I would go back over
And the
here.
truth is, they were, honestly, if they were brand name, they'd have been double that price, So basically what I realized was that as much as I loved building guitars, I'd already started dabbling in furniture.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoyed it just as much. And I realized I didn't want to be in the guitar business. As much as I love guitar, I still play.
Yeah.
I didn't want to. I knew that was going nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
I realized like it just wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
And so I started dabbling in furniture, and I already had in the back of my head about doing kitchen cabinets.
Mm-hmm.
But I went backwards into woodworking, woodworking. I mean, cabinets are easier to build than furniture. Furniture is easier to build than guitars.
Yeah.
But what do I do? I start with
the hardest
freaking
one.
guitar.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but whatever. But I realized that, because I started thinking after about 2 or 3 years, I'm like, maybe I could make a business out of this. I could care less about, let me rephrase that. Being a cop or a trooper, I took pride in it, but that wasn't my passion, So when I say I could care less about that versus woodworking, I could care less about it.
Yeah.
I still took it seriously and whatever. So I built a bunch of furniture between segueing from guitars to kitchens.
I remember you built and sold a lot of furniture when you lived next door to me because I've helped you put some of it, load some of it up before. Hey, I need some help. Come here.
Yeah. But I realized slowly but surely that business-wise, kitchens, it was where it's at.
Yeah, and money.
Yeah.
Where the money's at.
Yeah, it is what it is, And
I'd like to point out, though, you don't do just like standard kitchens. Most of your stuff that I see, is very custom work.
Well, it's all been custom until about probably 2 or 3 years ago, and I still am doing custom. But a lot of people don't. I get this a lot. Man, I'd like to get a kitchen from you, but I can't afford you. I'm like, how do you know?
Yeah.
How do you know?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I can, because I've had to. That's what I had to do starting out. I had to price things low because, and shout out to Sam Brown. Sam Brown let me build probably one of the nicer, bigger entertainment centers.
Mm-hmm.
And I could tell, man, he was unsure because this was several years ago.
Yeah.
He's like, man, I need an entertainment center. It's like 12 foot long and 10 foot tall and this and that, and I want this and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. In my mind, I'm like, no problem. I can do it. In his mind, he hadn't seen anything like that I didn't have anything like that under my belt,
Yeah.
Other than guitars.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember one day he was like, and it's big shout out to him because he took a chance on me. But one day we were talking, he's like, are you sure you can do this? I'm like, yeah, I am. He's like, okay. He goes, because he got it like an 80-inch TV, and it was the heavy TVs, the heavy flat screens at the time, He goes, now, is that going to hold that TV? Because it was sitting on it, wasn't on the wall.
Yeah.
And I said, I tell you what, Sam, when I deliver it, we're going to put the TV up there. And then me and Sam was heavier at the time. He's thin now.
He looks Ethiopian.
But at the time, he was heavy.
Yeah.
And I was a lot heavier. And I said, when I bring it here, we're going to put that TV on it. And me and you are going to get up there and stand in front of the TV and jump up and down. And if it feels even the slightest bit wanky, wobbly, it's free. He was like,
deal.
I mean, how you turn that down?
Right.
So it was a nightmare because I had to build that thing in 6 different pieces, and I couldn't put it together in my shop because my shop was only 8 foot tall.
Right.
And it was, a lot taller and a lot bigger. So I had to trust my measurements when I built it, like, okay, this piece is going on that one, that one's going next to this one, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And so the day I delivered it, I was nervous because I'm like, I haven't been able to put this together yet. And it's huge, So we put it together, and luckily everything fell into place. And I told him, I said, and he was like, oh, man, it looks great.
Mm-hmm.
Looks great. I said, all right, get up there. He's like, no, we don't have to. I'm like, get up there. You know what I mean? So I'm like,
we had a bit,
yeah. So, it was fine. I think it's still in his house today.
Yeah.
But where was I going with that?
Just building furniture.
Yeah, just building furniture. I just, it was so, just the creative aspect of that. And slowly but surely I started getting into cabinets. And, you're talking about, I had to sell things cheap because I had to get name recognition.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I had to get stuff out there. And I was selling it so cheap at the time, because I just wanted, it's like every piece I sold was like my advertisement, so it was like I was just trying to make ends meet, but still doing it and grinding. And it's kind of paid off, a little bit.
I know you did a lot of stuff on your own house when you lived out there, and that once you moved away from me, you moved out to that other house.
Yeah, on 1124.
Yeah,
I did everything, dude. Mm-hmm. That kitchen, that whole house you can't look 2 feet in that house and not see some type of custom woodworking,
right?
Yeah,
and it seemed like every time I went over there, I was like, dang, now you got this done?
I knocked walls out. I made the kitchen went from like 40 linear feet to 130.
Yeah.
And
big old custom island in the middle.
Yeah.
That's cool. So now you got employees and everything, right?
Yeah. I've actually had employees for several years.
Yeah.
It's worked out, man. I'm still like, when we ate today, it was like treading water, because I don't have the showroom open yet at Smith Home and Design. We got flooded. That hurt.
Yeah.
That hurt. And it set me back. I thought it was just going to set me back 3 or 4 months. And here we are almost a year later, and I'm just now seeing like the light at the end of the tunnel.
Oh, really?
With being able to be caught up and, get back into the business, because that's kept me from opening up the showroom.
Yeah.
We've had to focus on, we got to bring jobs in to make money, to make in, we got to pay bills, we got payroll,
Yeah.
we've got insurance, we've got, it's just so much to run a small business. It's crazy how much it costs a month.
Yeah.
But you just, I believe in it, so.
I think our community does too. I mean,
Yeah.
every time I see a Facebook post of I need a kitchen or I need a piece of whatever, your name is,
Yeah,
on it.
and I really appreciate that, but that's come from the grind
Yeah.
over the years. It's just like getting your name out there, and putting pictures of different things and different kitchens and all that. But I've sold custom kitchens cheaper than you can buy them at Lowe's,
Yeah.
just to get my name
Just to
out
get
there.
it out there. And those people are probably like, heck yeah, thank you.
I'm like, I need to go ahead and send you another bill.
Yeah.
Is that too late?
Yeah. I know it's been a year
15
or two,
years ago.
I think people underestimate the grind. I interviewed Brandon Riley, and he's built a heck of a business,
Yeah.
Ladies Boutique. Actually, we're filming this like the week his came out. Yours will come out several weeks from now.
Yeah, I
But-
watched part of
Yeah.
it.
And, he talked about the grind, how they started their business in their single wide trailer and then just through grinding and, a couple years. And then now they've built it into this multi-million-dollar business. But
Yeah.
people underestimate the grind. I think a lot of that's like social media nowadays because we all compare our highlight reel with somebody else's.
Yeah.
Well, no, what we do is we compare our whole life with somebody else's highlight reel.
Yeah.
Because you're not showing the late nights. You're not videoing late nights of you up making furniture
Oh man.
or
Dude.
Saturdays and Sundays making
Yeah.
furniture. You just
Yeah.
post a picture of, hey, here's this end table I made. Here's this coffee table I made. Here's this. I've seen you've made some real nice like conference room tables.
Yeah.
Big long 12, 18-foot tables. You just post that and everybody's like, man, that's amazing. But they don't think about all the work it took.
Yes.
Why is that table $5,000?
Yeah.
Well, I've got over 100 hours in it, and
Yeah, right.
people don't think about that.
And it's solid wood versus, you can't buy that.
Right.
You go to any store, and especially if it's at even nice furniture stores. Not knocking them. I mean, we got to have that stuff.
Yeah.
I buy from furniture stores.
Right.
But it's veneer.
Mm-hmm.
It's plywood.
Yeah.
So it's different. It's a little different.
So you're 56,
Yeah.
right? Is that what you said? I don't want to age you more than you
Yeah,
are.
please don't. Please don't.
You're 56. You got kids. You got grandkids. I don't mean to throw you under the bus on that. You
All
got
girls.
Grandkids. Yeah.
All girls.
All girls.
Yep.
Phew, I feel for you. I got 2 boys. I thank the Lord. He knew that I only needed just a couple little wieners to worry about, not everybody else's.
Yeah.
So I don't
Yeah.
have to deal with that. But, I started this pod to kind of inspire men, to equip men, to maybe they hear, your story, my story, any of these guys that have story on here and get some inspiration from it, get some motivation, some drive. So think about what are some things, and to me, it sounds like a lot of this comes naturally to you, right? Maybe even to your detriment of when I see something, I grab onto it like a rabid dog and hold on until whatever happens. But what are some things that you feel like in your life that have really made you successful?
That's a great question. I mean, I've been, and I don't know if this is, obviously everything we have is God-given, right?
Right.
That's not material.
Yeah.
But I think, I go back to my, like having big brothers, and just, if you've got something that you look up to, whether it's a friend or a brother or whatever, and they are actual, men's men, men's men, whatever. And you're still impressionable, that's what drove me, I think.
Gotcha.
You know, I was lucky, and I don't know what I would be like if I didn't have two older brothers to look up to. You know what I mean? Because they literally, dude, meant the world to me.
Yeah.
Like, we weren't friends, you know. I mean, they didn't take me like hanging out with them, you know. They were just almost like another parent kind of thing. They were just there, but they were just, you know, and I don't understand it. I mean, I look back and they're like, because I've been asked the question, and this sounds vain, and I really don't mean it to, but like, I've been blessed to be able to be good at a lot of things. You know what I mean? And I attribute a lot of that to just being driven. But what's made me driven? You know, sometimes I can't. I wonder that. Like, is it because I had two older brothers that I never thought that I would reach how I saw them? You know, maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's all of it. Maybe it's none of it. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, but to me, that's a big part of it. And
I know for me, you talk about being driven and being good at a lot of things. I don't take it vain because I feel the same way. Like, I'm pretty good at a lot of things.
Yeah.
You know, but for me personally, I didn't have older brothers. I'm the oldest. So I didn't have anybody to look up to in that aspect. But one of the things was my dad instilled a work ethic in me. And I didn't realize it at the time. Like, he always had side businesses. My dad was a truck driver, has been his whole life. But, you know, he wasn't afraid to work side jobs to make the money, to do the things or buy the things. And I hated him for it when I was that age. Like, we were always either mowing yards or building pallets, something, you know. I didn't have the cool lifestyle, my teenage years like my friends.
Yeah.
You know, going to football games on Friday night, and on Friday afternoon we was working. You know, it ain't the weekend yet. Right. And I hated it at the time, but now looking back, I'm like, he instilled a work ethic in me to where I'm not afraid to try anything because nobody's going to outwork me for something that I want. Right. You know, I know I can work hard enough to achieve it. Yep. Almost to a detriment too, sometimes to the point when I'm doing things that I feel like God's calling me to do, that I'm just like, is this what you want me to do, God? All right, now step out of my way and let me do it. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's not good. You know, God, you know, even with this podcast.
Maybe that's what he wants. You know what I mean? I mean, you know, I really believe that. I mean, maybe that's what he wants. He's like, okay, point you in a direction. Yeah. Now, that's up to you. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's not up to me now. You know, I'll be here behind you if you need something. Yeah. But, you know, I kind of believe that. I kind of believe that if, you know, because I grew up in church. And, like, my mother she's passed away, but my mother was the quintessential Christian lady. You know, and I hate saying Christian lady because sometimes that can be taken like, she's a good Christian lady. Yeah. No, you don't understand. Mom would give you, and I think I'm like her a lot. You know, I like helping people. Yeah. That don't ask for help. Yeah. I see that. I don't like to help people that are asking for help. Well, I did. Sometimes I did ask you to buy my supper tonight because I forgot my wallet, and you did it. You look like you need help. You look like you need help. But you know, growing up in church, so I've always had maybe it's from the creative aspect of my brain, but I've always had a philosophical. Being able, here's what you need to be able to do. If you can step out of the box and look at things from other people's perspective, you know, and I think being a state trooper helped me do this because a lot of times you're in a life and death situation. You have to make a decision not based on your personal feelings. You have to make a decision on what's right. You know what I mean? So I made wrong decisions younger. You know, I started when I was 21 years old. Yeah. Dumb. I was dumb. And you just doing what they pretty much instilled into I didn't know. I didn't know what to do. So I just had to make a decision. A lot of times it was wrong because, number one, I didn't have any experience to make the right decision, you know. And number two, it took me a while to realize, how to make a decision, how to be able to step out of the box and take your personal feelings out of something. A good example is, and I've told this analogy of a story a few times, but like, there's still personal feelings. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would, and as a trooper, you would deal with a lot of the same clientele, right? And I remember I got a call one night, two dudes in a fight, right? And I knew who they were, and I really disliked one of them personally. Like, I couldn't stand this guy for a real good reason. The other guy, I actually liked him. He wasn't a good guy. He was in jail all the time.
Yeah.
But I liked him. You know what I mean? I don't think he could help it, So when I got there, and this is the hardest thing, probably one that I ever had to do. But when I got there, I realized after interviewing, luckily I had some experience at the time, and I talked to people. I separated them. I talked to them, and guess what? I took the guy that I liked to jail, and let the guy that I could have made it work to where I took him to jail, but I wouldn't be able to live with myself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We took an oath, and it was absolutely, that's the Bible, but that's a good example of like being able to make a decision that sometimes you have to take yourself out of the equation, which is hard to do.
Yeah.
It's really hard to do. Because you may have really strong personal feelings about something.
Yeah.
And you may have to go against that to do the right thing,
So to me, the first thing my thought process goes to is everybody wants to talk about their truth, and that's not the same as the truth.
Right.
You know where I'm going with this?
Yes.
So sometimes, regardless of how you feel or what you think is it's really only this way. It's the truth and the way to do it. You know?
Yep.
That's a good point.
But anyway, like you were talking about, when you said, okay, now get out of the way. I really think that's what he wants.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, he doesn't want to babysit us, So if we're talking about being a man, then, look to God, pray, I still pray, I'm not a preacher. I don't know the Bible inside and out, but I know it enough, and I grew up enough being around it enough that prayer is a real thing.
Yeah.
And I think that, like what you said, if you say, okay, I'm going to pray about something. All right. Sometimes you have to take the step, you don't just, it's not just being spoon fed, prayer is not being spoon fed. It's like, again, if you're taking yourself out of the equation and is this the right thing to do? Is this what you want me to do, God? Then I think and then you just take the initiative.
So I'm gonna change a little bit what you said. You said sometimes I think you have to. I think you always have to take the step. Like if you feel like God's calling you to do something. And the reason I say that is like in the book of John, I mean, I'm not going to pull my Bible out, but I'm just going to tell you, in the book of John, every healing that Jesus does, there's a step of obedience required before the healing happens. So like he heals a man in the synagogue that has a jacked up arm, and he does it right then. He asks the man, "Do you want to be healed?" And the man's like, "Well, yeah, I do." He says, "Stretch out your arm." So if the man don't stretch his arm out, there's no healing. So he stretches out his arm, Jesus heals it. There's the man who's paralyzed on the mat. He's asked him the same thing, "Do you want to be healed?" And the man's like, "Yes, I do." He says, "Okay, stand up and walk." Well, if he doesn't stand up, there's no healing. There's like all these steps of obedience that have to take place.
Sure.
And like one of the things that I tell some of the people that I disciple is your miracle might be on the other side of a step of obedience. So I agree with you that he does want, my point was what I was trying to make is sometimes I try so hard to do it on my own.
Yeah.
Even to the point of failing.
Sure.
And this podcast is a perfect example. Some of our audience have already heard the story, but like a couple of times I've thought about quitting when God was there. I almost think, like you said, kind of behind me. I'm doing my thing, chugging along, and then a point to where I stumbled and almost fell, to where I thought about, this is stupid. He was there to catch me and say, no, not yet. Here's this to encourage you, or here's this money to help you, along the way. So I've always been that way, of just work ethic, of just, I'm just going to get it done. Nobody's going to outwork me.
Yeah.
All right. There's nothing beyond my reach if I'm willing to work hard enough.
Yeah.
I feel like that's where people give up.
Yeah.
The hard work.
That and worry.
Worry? Worry about what?
Just worry about
in general.
What's going to happen?
Oh, okay. If I step out here and do this, worry about what if it fails, or what if. Yeah.
I mean, that's huge. That's huge, man. And I worry a little. I would say on an average, because I talk to people. Mm-hmm. Some people are absolute warriors. Worry. Not warriors fighting.
Yeah.
They're worry warts.
Yeah.
All right. And it's just like, isn't it worry a sin?
I think in a sense, yeah.
Because I've been told that in church.
Well,
I don't know if it's a scripture.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you're going to draw me a blank on the scripture. I can tell you what the scripture says. It says, worry about nothing, instead pray about everything, is the scripture.
Well, there you go. That's it.
I can't remember where it's at in the Bible off the top of my
head. Well, it doesn't
head.
matter, but it is scripture, so that's, there's so many times I talk to somebody, or, whether it's a family member, or whatever, I'm like, why are you worried about this? Mm-hmm. And it's just, I think I learned that as a real young age, and half of it was because I just didn't care about anything.
Yeah,
nothing bothered me. I'm more worried now than I was 40 years ago. You know what I mean? Because you just not smart enough to care. Yeah, or worry.
Well, what do you think about responsibility, though? You think it's because you have more responsibility now?
Yeah, but I think it's like almost like a muscle memory with worry.
Okay.
I think worry, if you teach yourself, it's anything. If you want to build a muscle, what you got to do? You got to work it out.
Right.
You may be strong already, but you can be stronger. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's the same thing with mental. You have to do that. Like if say you have issues with worry, then you have to. It's another workout. It really is.
You have to put yourself through things that will make you, that you'd be worried about doing, but you have to put yourself through those things. Yes. And then you have to keep increasing that to the point to where you get to where you don't anymore. It's the same as building physical muscle or whatever.
Exactly.
You start at bench press, right? You start out with 135, and then through progressive overload over time, you get stronger.
Right.
That's a good analogy.
It's the same thing. Yeah. I really think, because and if you remind yourself as you're going through it, remember I could only bench 225 last year. Mm-hmm. And then remember how I used to worry about everything, mm-hmm. and I just let it go. Now, whether it's through prayer or just being mentally accountable for what you're worrying about, you need to remember it. You need to remember where you were, so you can see some type of progress with not being a worry. But
that's you talking about remembering where you were. That's something that I always. I see people always in one ditch or the other. For every mile of road, there's 2 miles of ditch, and we want to try and stay out of the ditches. And, in this instance, people either worry too much about past things. They look back to the past too much, and they dwell in it. That's one ditch. Or they don't look back at all, and they're just, rip the rearview mirror off, drive straight forward. I think you have to. You need to be focused on the future always, but you have to always be able to look back at where you came from.
You have to be aware.
Yeah.
You have to be aware of all that, the good and the bad. Mm-hmm. It's tough, man, because it's hard to, like I said, there are some people that are quintessential warriors, and it's hard to get into their head, like, I guess maybe I'm lucky. I don't worry about a lot,
Yeah.
because I think it's a lot of it is maybe especially at this point, I realize that, and I always attribute it to a God thing, if I was kind of somewhat hesitant or worrisome about something, and then I would get through it, I would remind myself, why did I worry about that?
Mm-hmm.
Why was I so tore up, wondering, well, what's going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
Well, quit being a baby.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just drive forward.
Yeah.
And but I think that's a lot. There's some people that are, I don't know if it's a genetic thing or maybe it's just how their not their DNA. That's the same as genetic, but the people that raised them.
Yeah.
Maybe
Their
mommy and daddy was a warrior.
Their upbringing.
But it's bad. It's bad. I listened to Peterson.
Jordan Peterson.
Mm-hmm. Golly.
That dude is
I love him.
genius.
He is. He really is.
Yeah.
But, he talks about courage. What's the difference between courage and all this and worry? And,
Mm-hmm.
To worry is absolutely weakness.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, okay. Well, I don't want to be weak.
Yeah.
So you know what? I ain't worried about it.
Yeah.
To
me, I think about stress in my life. Like stress is a good thing if you process it and use it well. Okay, back to the physical analogy, right? We build and make stronger bodies by putting it under stress.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we go through the stress, then we're stronger after it. Mentally, I feel like it's the same. But the worrying is you're not going through the stress. You're just stuck in it.
It's hindering.
Yeah.
Instead of working through it.
Yeah.
I don't think, like you just said, that's a good point. I think it can be in the back of your mind, but it's still, as long as you're working, and I think that's the thing, like when you do get through it and you're telling yourself, I know I'm worrying, but I'm going to keep going.
Right.
And then that's when you make the progress of releasing or letting go of worry.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, because then you go through that situation, and like you said, in the back of your mind, you're worried about this, but I'm going to work through it. I'm going to push through it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get through it somehow.
Yeah.
Whether I'm, leaning on my own strength, leaning on God, praying, leaning maybe on a family member, a friend. And then when you come through the other side of that valley or that trial, then when you look back and you're like, that wasn't so bad after all.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the next time you face that trial, you're like, I've already been through this.
Yeah.
This is no big deal. I can handle this.
Yeah.
Same as I step up to the bar and it's 400 pounds, but I've deadlifted that before. When I step up to it now, I'm like, I've done this before. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
So building physical strength and mental strength is very closely related, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anybody that's done the physical strength would agree with that.
Yeah. I can't think of the British guy, Piers Morgan.
Yeah.
I saw a short clip where he asks a guy, what's more important, physical or mental strength? And the guy thinks about it for a while. And the guy's jacked, so you can tell he's a bodybuilder or strength athlete or something.
Yeah.
And he said physical is more important. And Piers is like, oh, absolutely not. He said, I feel like mental strength is what's lacking. He's like, there's all kinds of gym rats out there, but they're stupid. And the guy says, no. He says, really, as a society, we're lacking in both. He said, but if a person has the discipline to build physical strength and work out and go through adversity, which is what working out is, he said, then they can turn around and they can apply that to their mental strength too.
Yeah.
So, I think they're very closely related.
I do too. Yeah. Yeah, they run hand in hand for sure.
In a sense, building physical strength is a mental game too.
Yeah.
Because to build
Absolutely.
an elite body, you can get in decent
That's
shape.
discipline.
Yeah.
You've got to have, which is mental strength. You're disciplined to go to the gym. You're disciplined to realize how you're thinking at the moment.
Yeah.
And how you're thinking. Am I thinking selfishly, or am I thinking out of the box
Yeah.
here. Am I being a little whiny baby about me, or am I thinking about the greater good of whatever it is that I'm working towards? So
That's good. I mean, I'm sure we've all been guilty of. I love how you said that, whiny baby. Am I thinking about me? I've been guilty of that.
Heck yeah. Everybody has.
Yeah.
Everybody has. And if somebody says they haven't, and they've always been, different than that, they're liars.
Mm-hmm.
Liar. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's why, like, I wouldn't go back to where I was when I was 20 years old. I don't want that.
Yeah.
I've embraced every bad thing I've gone through and every good thing I've gone through, because everything I've gone through has made me what I am right now.
Yeah.
And I'll say this in cops with law enforcement, and I don't say this on Facebook because people will take it the wrong way. But when I hear a policeman say, "I can't unsee the things I've seen," I'm like, you're in the wrong job profession.
Yeah.
I get it. It's not good. I've cried. I've cried looking at, a dead child. There's been so many, I've been scared to death, being on the SWAT team. I prayed nonstop when I did that.
Yeah.
And you talk about the warrior mentality, the fighting warrior, not the worry warrior.
Yeah.
But the warrior mentality, like, that is being prepared to die.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So whenever we would go in, like our team would go into, anytime we showed up, somebody was already dead or they were probably going to die. Mm-hmm. It was always bad when we showed up.
Yeah, with SWAT teams coming, yeah.
So I remember you just have to, you learn. You know what I mean? You have to adapt to that mentality. And I would always pray a little bit, and you could probably relate to this especially, but like when it came time to do the job, I would always be okay with dying. I would just say, okay, this is my day. If this is my day, it's my day.
Yeah.
But I'm not stopping. When I go through that door, if I hear gunshots coming at me, I am not stopping. I'm going to keep going until I'm either dead or that guy's neutralized.
Or mission accomplished, yeah.
Yes. And that's every time, every single time, and even as a trooper, honestly, being a trooper was more dangerous than being on a SWAT team.
Yeah.
Even though we were in 100% death situations, we were prepared.
Yeah. You knew going into the situation, this is bad. The reason they're calling me is because this is bad.
Yeah. You go as a trooper, you're by yourself 95% of the time, and you get called, especially back then, they don't do it as much now, but like if we would get a call of a domestic violence and there may be guns involved, there may be weapons involved of some sort. Mm-hmm. Now I think it's mandatory now you have to wait for backup, but you didn't wait for backup back in the day,
Well, I mean, it's somebody's life on the line.
Yeah. Yeah. But they look at it from I see both sides.
Yeah, I do too.
But back then, and even until I retired, I'm like, I ain't waiting. Write me up. Don't care. Yeah. I'm going. Right. You know what I mean? But, you have to have that mentality, man or woman, a mentality where, okay, it will keep you from having tunnel vision. And anybody in law enforcement or military is familiar with tunnel vision. Yeah. It's the same thing with working out. I've had tunnel vision and I hated it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It was the worst thing you can have when you're in a high stress situation. Yeah. But you can get through it. You have to adapt. You have to get your mindset. And if you are truly like going into a situation where you could die, like there's no doubt, you may kick this door open and you may be dead 1 second later or less than 1 second later.
Yeah.
you know, you have to have that mentality of, I'm okay with dying right here, right now. Because if I truly have that mentality, I'm not going to get tunnel vision.
Yeah.
I'm going to accomplish what I came to do, you know.
And
the only reason I can say all that is because experience.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, and I don't think you ever lose that either. And you brought that up. It makes a good point. Like, I did 8 years in the military, you know, went to Afghanistan, saw some stuff. But back up to the 2021 tornado, our pastor we have now, he was the chaplain for the candle factory. And so when he found out it happened, you know, he felt as a chaplain he needed to be there. And he'd only been living here a couple years, and me and him, you know, had built a good relationship, friendship. And he called me and he said, "Hey, I'm going." And it was kind of one of those guys, you know, not to toot my own horn, but when you go into situations like that, you want somebody you can trust, and he knew he could trust me. So he calls. He's like, "I'm going. Will you come too?" I was like, "I'm getting my boots on," you know.
Yep.
And when we walked into that situation, you know, by this point, I've been out of the military 15 years, you know. But when we walked into that situation, it looked like a war zone.
Yeah.
I mean, it looked like something I should have seen.
I went.
Yeah. I don't remember seeing you, but that whole night's a blur to me. Yeah. But when I was one of the first civilians there. When I got there, it was like 3 Mayfield police officers there. David Harrison was standing at the top of a pile, and I showed up, and I was like, "Where you need me?"
Yeah.
You know, my pastor, he was there to pray, but when I got there, my mind automatically flipped.
Yeah.
I was like, "We got to get to work."
It's in your DNA, man.
We ain't got time to pray. We got to get to work. You know, not to say I wasn't praying or didn't pray as I walked up, but in my mind flipped. I was like, "It's time to get to work." And so he had just torn his bicep too. My pastor did. So that's, you know, he was kind of on the sidelines on the phone, and I'm like, "I got to go." He's like, "Yeah, go." And I remember that night they had 9 people pass away in that tornado. In just that spot, they had 9 people pass away. And I pulled 4 of the 9 out. Yeah. You know, and it was, the first one was the hardest. He was one of the deputy jailers. Yeah. And when we uncovered him, it was so crazy. The guy, it's 2 guys. He's a deputy jailer, and one of the inmates, they were under this wall, and by the time we had gotten it off of him, he was probably already dead, and probably had been dead for a little while. But he was a big guy, and the only reason the guy laying next to him lived is because he was taking the whole weight of the wall. And the guy next to him, you know, he probably heard him die. Yeah. Take his last breath, you know. So I worked on him for like 20 minutes because I was an EMT too. So, you know, and then, you know, eventually I was like, "Hey, this is, you know, it ain't, you know." And
gotta move on.
I prayed on. And, you know, because I had that mental strength already built up from my experience, you know, we just one person to the next. "Hey, let's get this person out. Let's get this person out. This person didn't make it. Get them on a gurney. What do? We ain't got time to stop and cry about it. We got to get the next." Because there was like 70 people under the rubble, you know. And I remember when we finally got them all, I was there for like almost 5 hours, you know, in the middle of the night. I finally come out and
pouring
rain, yeah. And I didn't know this until after I'd come out, but it's a candle factory, right? And so there's wax everywhere. Well, me being on my belly, I found one hole that had like 12 people in it. And I'm the one digging and getting them out and handing them out too. Like, I'm in front of the volunteer firemen. Like a couple volunteer firemen I knew, they didn't even try and get me out of the way. They were just like, I was like on a mission, you know. I almost had tunnel vision, you know, but they were just like, "Hey, what help do you need?" I'm like, "Give me a car jack. Give me something to get this rubble off these people," you know. And so I'm getting them out left and right. And unbeknownst to me, when I come out, I had red wax all over my face. And people thought I was bleeding. Yeah. Everybody kept stopping me going, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "I'm fine." Wow. I mean, I was helping. I wasn't. And so I remember all of that, and just that switch flipping on the scene and saw it. I was just like, "All right, time to get to work." Yeah. You know, and I didn't even think about my own safety or anything like that. So unbeknownst to me, during this time, my wife, who was working at the jail, she was a deputy jailer. Our jail got hit, so she had to go, you know, evacuate the inmates and stuff. And later on, it's like 4:00 in the morning. I got to her, and we go home, and my boys were with my parents, and adrenaline's coming down. And I remember breaking down and crying then. You after everything had calmed down, that with why,
Yeah.
why did this person live and this person didn't,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it was chaos, and
Yeah.
I was having to I grabbed a couple firemen who were losing their stuff, and I'm like, you gotta calm down, and
Yeah.
that goes back to the people who that they probably didn't need to be in that job to begin with,
Yeah. Yeah. It's but like I said, you have to embrace that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't, even though you said why, if it affects you to the point where you couldn't do something like that anymore, then you're in the wrong job, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's completely okay. Not everybody is cut out, because I remember the moment when I asked myself, "Can I do this or not?"
Mm.
I'd worked my first fatal, and it was on 641 south of Murray. It was like 3:30 in the morning. I was young, man. I hadn't been on my own maybe a week or two.
Yeah.
And I was hunting for drunk drivers. They were coming from south then, down around Purrier.
Yeah.
So I turned on this car, and I think it sped up, and it was foggy, so foggy that night. And all of a sudden, I lost the headlights, or the tail lights.
Yeah.
I'm like, where'd they go? And when I came up, I had to slam on the brakes and stop, and they had went off the road and just went up on their side, and they hit a tree, kind of skidded. It wasn't really bad damage, but I pulled up and I jumped out, and I thought I was going to have to get in a foot pursuit or something.
Yeah.
So I run over there, and this dude's getting out of the car, and I help him out, and I actually cuffed him and cuffed him to my cruiser.
Yeah.
And I said, "You're not under arrest, but is there anybody else in the car?" And he said, "Yeah, I think niece or somebody's in the car. Somebody, it was a female."
Yeah.
Well, to spare the gruesome mental picture, she was beheaded.
Oh man.
That was my first dead person, really, that I'd seen.
Yeah.
And I was by myself in a foggy night in a dark road, with just a flashlight.
Mm-hmm.
And like I was standing in it. I didn't realize she'd been thrown out. I was standing in it.
Oof.
And it freaked me out. I couldn't even talk. I called post. I was like, I think I got my number wrong. But I was like, 766. I was like, 764 Mayfield. I need an ambulance. You know what I mean? I'm like,
Right.
I don't need an ambulance. I need the coroner.
Yeah. What do I even call for?
So
Yeah.
I didn't know. It just had me completely, 21 years old, and I'm right in the middle of this. And I remember that night, I could not go to sleep. I get home, or I'm actually staying at the Kentucky Dam Village at the time they put us up there. So I remember asking myself, it was like 5 o'clock in the morning before I even got home. And I was so tore up, and I remember like talking to myself, I was alone, and I was like, okay, Brad, you can either do this or you can't.
Yeah.
What's it going to be? And I remember that's when like the switch flipped in me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I want to be able to do something not many people can do.
Yeah.
That was kind of like my motivation, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm like, I think I can be good at this, but I've got to be able to handle this stuff. I'm going to see this more and more.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I had to make up my mind right there, and I did. That. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't want to unsee that, because that's what, if it weren't for that, and yeah, I'm a bit callous. We're all a bit callous.
Yeah.
People that go through that.
Mm-hmm.
But I was able to do it. I was able to do it and do it good, and not get distracted or feel whiny about myself.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. This brings up, I had a past guest on, and we talked a little bit about mental health. What do you think makes the difference between guys like you and me, who have seen bad things, been in terrible situations versus the guy who can't handle it? What do you think? What do you think the difference is in that? You know, because I know guys that I think are great guys, stand up guys, and if they'd have went through what I went through that night, or if they'd have seen some of the things you've seen, you know, that doesn't even bring up, you know, some of my overseas stuff,
Right.
but like they'd have folded and cracked. You know,
Yeah.
What do you think makes a difference in that? Or,
I think it's just a lot of it's the desire of what do you want to be? Do you want to go? And that's okay too.
Yeah.
You know, not everybody needs to be, for lack of a better term, that callous
yeah.
and deal with stuff. You know what I mean?
But we do have to have men like that aren't afraid to do that.
Absolutely. 100%
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's a necessity, unfortunately.
I think, and I'll say this, you know, like in today's society, people look at guys like you and me as toxic males.
Yeah.
And even like people really close to me, my relationship is affected because it's how they're taught in colleges now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't like anything extreme. I don't like extreme conservative. I don't like extreme liberal.
Same.
Anything extreme is bad
Yeah.
to me. And so I'm not saying, you know, I'm not saying this from a political standpoint to say liberal,
Mm-hmm.
but toxic male is a liberal term.
Yeah.
And it's bad. And I'm the quintessential toxic male
Yeah.
from a liberal standpoint, especially from females. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think in today's society, based on what you're just asking, right, about what makes a difference, I think we're all able. It just depends on, like, I don't think it has anything to do with male. I don't think it has anything to do with female. I don't think it has anything to do with size. I don't think it has anything to do with how you look. It is everything to do with, in my opinion, with what do you want?
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I tell you what, man, I think, and this is probably a crazy thing to say, but I think women are more mentally tough than men.
I would agree with that.
And I say that because, and I've looked hard at this, okay? I'm a thinker, you know, so I just sit around and I think about stuff like that. You know, I love philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
I love perspective. I like your perspective. I want to hear somebody else's perspective that disagrees with me.
Yeah.
And let's talk about that. Why do you feel that way?
Why do you think that way?
Yeah. So, man, I've just seen some crazy things, and a lot of it has to do with either somebody they love or care about. Probably most of that. But, man, I've seen women stand in glass and not even know they're standing in glass to protect a child.
Yeah.
And the guys out there don't want to walk in the glass.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I'm like, why is that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Is that, but I think, you know, I don't know. I think, I guess that's why I'm saying I don't think it matters if you're male or female. A lot of it is upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what have you been through in life? You know, were you raised where you're slapped around, you know, or where you were just, you know, had a liberal dad,
Yeah.
or mom, you know, they're preconditioning you to be soft.
Yeah. I can
You
see
know?
that because my dad, I mean, my dad's a small guy. He's like 5'7", maybe, you know. And when I needed a whooping, it wasn't nothing for him to pick up whatever's close by and do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And dude, I know.
which in turn calloused me for
Yes.
adulthood.
And it goes back to don't judge a book by its cover, because I made the mistake when I was younger of looking at a guy and go, that dweeb.
Yeah.
Well, that dweeb is the most mentally tough dude I've ever met.
Mm-hmm.
There was a guy he's not a dweeb, but there was a guy on the SWAT team that he was my mentor, not intentionally. He wasn't trying to be my mentor, but he was my mentor whether he knew it or not. And his name was Jim White. And Jim was in Vietnam. He was the old guy on the team.
Yeah.
And dude, you look at him, he's a little guy, 5'7", I don't know, 5'8". He's not real tall. The most unassuming guy you'd ever look at. I mean, he just grins all the time.
Yeah.
But he was the most mentally tough guy I think I've ever been around.
Mm-hmm.
And I would pick his brain a lot because he was a sniper in Nam. And he's like, what's the Hathcock, the Marine sniper, Gunny Hathcock.
Yeah.
Okay, the world renowned guy.
Most kills ever or something.
He's in his book. Like,
your guy is?
Yeah. He was, he's been mentioned in sniper books,
Mm-hmm.
and as a trooper, he made a crazy good shot up in northern Kentucky on a hostage situation, and he's just got nerves of steel.
Yeah.
And I was like, Jim, does that ever bother you? Anything ever bother you? Like when something like that happens? And I'm being serious. I'm not wanting story time.
Right.
I want to connect mentally with him because I want to be like him.
Yeah. What makes you this way?
Yes.
Yeah.
And here's what he told me one day that stuck with me, and I'm just like, okay, I don't need to know anything else. But we were talking about something, and I think it was one of those maybe a sniper situation he was in as a trooper, But I said, so when you pulled the trigger and ended that guy's life, tell me, what did you feel? And he said, well, dude, most unassuming, is, well, the way I look at it, I'm either going to kill that guy or he's going to kill my little kid's daddy. I'm like,
wow. Yeah.
Totally selfless. Wasn't about him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It was about his kid.
It was about being a dad or a protector, But he said that, and I'm like, I'll never have to ask another question again.
Yeah.
Because I've got family,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to, if I have to do something, then it's either me or my mom's son.
Yeah.
Or it's either me or my dad's son or my brother's brother.
Yeah.
No matter how you look at it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That is freaking powerful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's one of those warrior mentalities. It's not really about, I ain't afraid to die. I just don't want my mom's son to die.
Yeah.
So stuff like that for me, man, is like, I can think about stuff like that and just focus on it and kind of wish I was back on
the
doing
team.
something,
Yeah.
Let's go,
Yeah, I get fired up to do
Yeah,
stuff like that too.
absolutely.
You get to reminiscing and thinking, and some of it to me is like the brotherhood. I miss it, which I've built a good brotherhood. Here,
Yeah.
some of my brothers in Christ, but it's just different.
It is different.
Yeah,
It's different,
Man, I think we've made it some good. We're about 2 hours in, so I think
time flies when you're having fun.
It goes fast, don't it? I know we covered a lot of stuff and we didn't even cover some of the stuff that we talked about, maybe talking about. So maybe we do it again
sometime.
Days.
Yeah, no problem. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a lot of
Enjoyed
fun. Maybe we get a couple more men. I like having discussion with men who, and you brought it up too. I like sitting across the table from somebody that we might not see eye to eye on and just be like, why do you think like that?
I love it. I don't know why, but I do.
I don't have to get up. We don't have to get upset or angry or none of that. But just like
You know what?
convince me why it needs to be.
Here's
done.
why I like it, because a real man. Because I've changed my perspective a couple times.
I have too.
On maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's like I really disagree with that. You know, but the way somebody can explain it, I'm like, well, I never thought about that,
Yeah.
and I like that.
Yeah.
You know what? I really appreciate
Yeah.
what you just said, because it actually, but only a real man can do that. You know, if you're just so stubborn, now I'm stubborn about certain things. I ain't going to back down. But there are certain things in perspective that I like. I want to be open-minded.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I want to hear a perspective, because it could influence me to think a little bit more knuckleheadish about it. You know.
Well, I worked with a guy for a couple years at my work. I mean, we still work there, but we do separate jobs now. And he was pretty liberal. And I avoided having deep conversations with him because I was afraid I'd get upset. But, you know, I grew to like him after a while. And then our conversation, you know, we work swing shifts. So sometimes, you know, we're late at night, you know, just trying to stay awake, talking about whatever. And our conversations got deeper. And, you know, we're pretty opposite on, you know, our views, you know. And eventually, you know, we just got to the point I was like, I know you kind of think this way, but why do you think like that?
Yeah.
And then he explained. You know, and then I was almost like you said, I was like, I disagree with that, but I appreciate you more knowing how you got there.
Yeah.
Like, your idea is not as boneheaded as I thought.
Yeah.
I still think you're wrong.
Yeah.
But you came about it a lot. You know, I have more respect for you now than I did.
Yeah.
And I think that's all right too.
Yeah. Oh, I'd love to come back, because there's some things I want to talk about, and I think having other guys in the room, you know, make it more interesting. You know, different perspectives. I love perspectives, man. I appreciate perspectives, especially if they're perspectives from experience. Especially from experience. If you have a perspective from experience, and I disagree with it, then I really want to hear your side of the story. You know,
yeah. If somebody can say, "Hey, I've done this for 10 years, and this is why I came to this conclusion," well, then you probably need to listen up.
Right.
Not I saw a TikTok and now I think this way. You know, that's
well, I Googled it.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, it's been tradition for the guest to pray us out. Are you cool with that?
I'm good.
All right, let's do it.
God, I appreciate the time. I'll be just humbled. I've been humbled, and just appreciate the time that I've had to spend with my brother Brad, and it's actually kind of ignited a little bit of fire in me to be a little bit closer to you, you know, tonight. So I appreciate, you know, that's your way of working in me. So I have nothing but thanks. So I appreciate, watch over us for the rest of the night, and the people we love, and in all things your name, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Until next time, stay ready.